can you share a bit about how multiracial people, especially with those with a blend of historically oppressed and oppressor ancestries, might experience ancestor work?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, one way that I've experienced ancestor work is noticing that patterns and behaviors that I thought were just me, feeling confused and just my usual pattern of confusion or something, um, beginning to get untangled and me gaining a lot of clarity once I began to see, oh, this comes from the perspective of this people that are part of my ancestry, and this perspective comes from these people. And if I address the issues both of them are facing and the challenges they face in their lineages, then I can begin to harmonize their presence in myself and allow the medicine that's wanting to come forward through their connection move through me out into the world, instead of just the dissonance of two different perspectives within me kind of butting heads. And so that's one thing I think is just notice, if you have a sense to feel a lot of internal conflict, it can be really helpful to start to locate that in conflict at its root in the realm of the ancestors, versus just think it's just your stuff, you just have to deal with it, it's how you always be, in a sense.
Okay, so then has doing this work changed your understanding of race and your own racial identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways, I feel more rooted in my Blackness, which is just, I think, a product of gaining more specificity as I feel in the medicine of that part of my line. And because that part of us in a culture of white supremacy can get overshadowed. And, when I was growing up, I really wasn't given a huge conception of race or like context for racism from my family, because they wanted to, in a sense, protect me by not, talking about it as much. But for me, what that resulted in is a lot of the racism I experienced growing up, again, internalizing, thinking, oh, this is just because there's something wrong with me. And so the more I connected with my people and rooted into their wisdom, the more I was able to feel all of those people standing behind me that embodied these ways that were so devalued by my culture. And then the more I wanted to honor those people and embody them in my expression in the world. So, and I think that resulted in me forming a lot of more Black community in my life, and a lot of more connection to different aspects of just Blackness and Black culture and the joy of being Black. With that said, also part of my ancestor work involved heavily working with my European descended lines as well, of course. And so what that's allowed me to see is how false, I mean, not that I didn't know this before intellectually, but it's allowed me to really feel the false construct of race, in a sense. In the way that racism is, a distraction. And what the construct of race does, or especially the construct of whiteness does, is it divorces people from their ancestry, from the people they come from their background. Like, I really don't think about whiteness much as having to do with skin color. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates said it really well in Between the World and Me. He used the phrase, the people that believe themselves to be white. It's so much about our beliefs. It's so much about the way we sell out our cultural heritage and our differences for socioeconomic privilege and capital, in a sense, and power. And so, like, just for example, looking at the way that for a long time in our culture, Irish people weren't considered to be white, and then eventually they became white. And so there's this way that whiteness from the beginning has been used to disconnect people and not allow them to organize in the face of oppressive power structures. And so I think the more we connect with our ancestors of all of our diverse ancestries, in this culture, I'm seen as Black by default for many different reasons that I won't get to as much. And I've come to love that. and appreciate that, and appreciate those aspects of myself and that and my culture that inform that Blackness. And I simultaneously hold the other part of my consciousness that knows that I also am Swiss. I also am Jewish, and these are equally important parts of my identity. It doesn't mean that any one of them have to then be smaller. They can all be bigger inside of me and held inside of me the more I connect into the specificity of my people, and don't just say, oh, I'm mixed, or, you know, oh, I have some white ancestry and some Black ancestry, because that just sort of reifies this racial construct that we're all sort of struggling in.
Right, beautifully put. Thank you for that. Now, the title of our session is Ancestral Healing as Resistance. Why do you see it that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. So partly, in part, because of what I was saying, that ancestral healing is an act of resistance because it allows us to provide an antidote to colonization and whiteness, which seeks to separate and seeks to cut us off from our roots. If you have an accent, if you wear different clothing than the dominant culture, if you eat traditional food, all those things make you have less cultural and socioeconomic power in our culture for the most part, because they make you less white. Whiteness is erasure in a sense. It is the denial, really, of ancestry. So the more that we connect to our ancestors and the specificity of our people, the more that we are resisting a culture of white supremacy, a culture, and also the more we take the time to honor and love our people, the more that we are saying my people and I, by extension, are worthy of love, which I think in this culture is an act of resistance. And so, I mean, when we know where we came from and we know who our people are, even if we don't have their names, if we just know a little bit about their energy, their medicine, their gifts, their affinities with the plant and animal world, how they connected with the sacred, if we start to know those little bits about our people, it's so much harder to be vulnerable to, you know, the negative sides of capitalism, of colonization, of all the ways that we are manipulated by dominant culture at times. And so, because when you know that there's thousands of people behind you who every time you do something are doing it with you, then it's a lot harder to be lied to. Someone can't make you feel afraid that you're not enough or you're not worthy of something so they can sell you something, because thousands of people sacrificed their whole entire lives so that I could be here. Thousands of people dreamed me into existence. You can't tell me that I need something that you're selling me to be whole. I am whole. My people are here with me. And when we feel that absence, that gap of that great stream of love we should have access to behind us, it's a lot easier to be lied to.
Yeah, well, once again, beautifully put. You've got some great thoughts that you're sharing. Thank you so much for that. Now, you've already sort of touched on this, but let's go a little deeper. So what are the benefits that you've seen in your own life from deepening your connection to your ancestors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I guess first and foremost, it's just been amazing to see the difference between when I first started ancestral healing work till now. When I first started trying to show up with my ancestors, it was like trying to communicate with someone when you were at the bottom of a swamp and they were like standing on the edge of the pond or something and talking down to you, and you hear little warbly words every now and then out of the water. And I say that as encouragement, actually, not discouragement, that if you feel that way when you're first reaching out, don't give up, because that's where I started and not where I stopped. And if I hadn't started during that time, then I wouldn't have made the intimate, loving connection that I feel now. And so part of the benefit was just in doing the ancestral healing work in particular on my line specifically, in the different traditions I've worked in, is just suddenly feeling that my ancestors want for me to be full of joy, that they want for me to be in love. They want for me to be doing that which, that the dreams that I fell so in love with, they motivated me to come to this planet to live them. They want that for me. They want that level of alignment and coherence in all aspects of my life, which includes, you know, great sex and, you know, the resources I need to live my purpose and style, and, you know, all sorts of things that I think sometimes if we approach from like a maybe Protestant like work ethic, got to earn it, we might think, oh, our ancestors just want us to do what's right and good and like proper. But what my feeling has been, no, they want us to be in alignment with our heart. They want us to be in alignment with our passion and what actually feeds and nourishes us, and what allows us to bring our gifts to the world in a way that feeds and nourishes the world. That's what our ancestors want for us. But before I'd done the healing work, it mostly felt like a duty and obligation to show up to them. I felt like, okay, I know you're supposed to do ancestor work because that's a good thing, and they're supposed to be your source of protection, so I should do this. But I didn't feel viscerally that sense of love that is there. And I just want to emphasize that everyone has that love there for them, no matter what your relationship is like with your family or what you know of your people, that if you go back far enough, there are ancestors there that are loving you and that are dreaming you and that are only want the best for you. And so one of the benefits is just having that access to that stream of love every day that I can tune into at any moment. And the way I personally engage with that love as a core part of my day is in my altar practice, just starting my day, connecting with my ancestors and sharing with them what I'm going to do for the day, and then listening to their guidance and perspectives on what I'm doing, and asking for help in certain, you know, easing certain transitions that I might be making throughout my day. And that has just been incredible to feel their ability to perceive what I'm not seeing often in myself and in the course of my day. And I think that's partly because the ancestors were once human. They're these unique beings in the ecosystem of helping spirits that are available to us. They know what it is to be human, and they also know what it is to be spirit. And that's priceless to have a guide that has that level of knowledge about your daily life. Because sometimes when we talk to our helping spirits, we get these answers like, oh yeah, you have to become a star to do this. And we're like, okay, that's cool. That's helpful advice. But how does this help me pay my taxes this year? You know? So I think ancestors are very much about those questions. How do I find a loved one? How do I live my purpose more fully? How do I pay my taxes this year? You know, they really can help us with the day-to-day struggles in a huge way. So that's one aspect of benefit. The other aspect that I've seen is my ancestors have been really intrinsic in just allowing me to shift the dynamics of my family relationships. That the more that I healed my lines, the more relationships that always felt really brittle and distant in my family suddenly started to become more intimate and more open. And people were reaching out and calling that had never called me before in like 30 years. And it was just this sense that before we had all been kind of tiptoeing around this baggage that no one wanted to really deal with or acknowledge, or just out of ignorance, we didn't know it was there, but we knew instinctively we didn't want to engage with it too much, and that we would have to face it if we engaged more intimately with each other. And the more that healing work progressed, the more those relationships started to open up, and this flow of love increased in the whole family, not just between the ancestors and me, but between everyone.
Yes, I can totally relate to what you're talking about, because I've been doing my own work. And if I'd listened to you talk before I'd done some of my own work, I wouldn't been able to relate to that, what you were saying. And I don't know if I'd even believe it, honestly. But now that I've done this kind of work, I've learned that just by clearing my one grandfather's lineage, I'm finding that I have more physical strength, which I did not expect, because like I've been moving a lot of boxes from one house to another. And I would ask, okay, grandfathers, I really need more strength. Give me strength. And suddenly I'm able to lift things. And I know that would sound crazy to somebody who hasn't done this kind of work, but I'm sure that you're nodding your head. Yes.
Yeah.
It works. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think things that seem like miracles only seem that way because we're so not used to having access to these resources nowadays. And when we have access, it's like, oh yeah, of course I can do this. Of course I can perform this feat of strength with the help of my grandfather. Why not? Yes, I love that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, somewhere in our lineage of all the thousands and thousands of ancestors that we all have, there's going to be an expert somewhere in there if
Exactly.
what you need help